Hi everyone. So I'm Ria Rustagi, the co-founder of a startup called Newfini. Here we are developing a wearable device which validates your mental health. So meditation, neuroscience, and yoga are not very far from each other. They are very well connected, and this is why we have a panel of four amazing women from India. One is a psychologist, one is an NLP practitioner, a coach, a meditation, and a spiritual gurus, like here we call it in the West. So I would like each one of you to introduce yourself to our audience. So Madhuri, can you go first?
Thanks, Ria. Hi, my name is Madhuri Pandit. I'm an artist, entrepreneur, and a pranic healer. Now, for those of you who do not know, pranic healing is an art and science of energy healing. And, it can heal your mental, emotional, as well as physical ailments, and it can address those issues. And Master Chokok Sui is the modern founder of this pranic healing. And meditation on twin hearts that we do on a regular basis is much a part, very much integral part of this pranic healing school. And my journey, if I talk about it, it started in the year 2014 when I did my first basic class of pranic healing. And that was the first time when I did meditation on twin hearts, and I had a very profound experience. I, in fact, cried a lot because at that point in time, I realized that there were a lot of negative emotions and thoughts I was holding on to, or probably I was hiding them behind my smile. Where you want to put up your brave face and say, "Oh, I'm perfectly fine, everything is okay." And that's where everything came to surface, and that's how my journey of healing started. And it's been 6 years, and I have never looked back.
Amazing. So you're doing this for quite a while now.
Yes.
One question I would want to ask you right now: what got you into meditation?
Initially it was frankly speaking, when I went to pranic healing class, and when they told me that you'll be taught meditation on twin hearts, I was like, kya hota hai? Because I never did meditation, and as you must be aware, there are a lot many modalities of meditation. People listen to songs or do whatever, I mean different kinds of meditation. So I did not know what was it, but when I did it, I felt sense of calm. I felt so peaceful, and there were so many thoughts which had cluttered my mind earlier, and probably because of all these negative thoughts and emotions, I was fumbling at various places. I was trying to put things together, keep things together, but it wasn't working for me. So I thought, okay, let me give it a shot. How does it work? And it has worked beautifully for me. So it's been, like I said, 6 years, and I have never looked back. Every day meditation on twin hearts is like my daily dose of positivity.
Positivity. Thank you so much, Madhuri. Now I'll like Meenal to introduce herself. Meenal, you are still on mute. Perfect.
Pranam. Myself, Meenal Breed from Yogurja, Pathway to Yogic Life. My journey has started in 2014. I'm a spiritual coach and a holistic yoga teacher. I'm also a prenatal, postnatal yoga teacher. I also take Garbha Sanskar classes. I'm a Reiki master. I'm a pranic healer. I'm into access bar. I'm into angel therapist. I'm into various healing modalities. Basically, it's calling that after working for 12 years in corporates, I suddenly realized that I'm born to work and help out people. So now I'm on this path.
What got you into this?
As I mentioned, it was calling, Ria.
Okay.
I realized this when I joined a 7-day yoga course in Yoga Institute.
Okay.
So on third day, I realized this is my path and this is my calling.
It's amazing. Thank you so much, Meenal, for sharing your amazing experience. Tara, now can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, unmuted just in time. Hi, my name is Tara. So I am an ex-hospitality professional, worked for a pretty long time in the corporate field for very large Indian and multinational companies, and then finally been self-employed for the past decade or so. And I am a coach. I'm a behavioral specialist, and I train and I coach people. I'm also an NLP practitioner, which is essentially the study of brain patterns and communication and behavior and its impact on each other. So yeah, it's been a decade, and I can't think of doing anything else.
That's amazing. And how did you bring these 3-4 things together? So a coach, a NLP practitioner, a meditation. So how did you have that moment?
Actually, my moment was it was a journey. So when I left my corporate job, I actually did a certification in image consulting. When I was an image consultant, I realized people came to me with problems I could not solve being just an image consultant. And then I decided to become a coach. While I was coaching, my clients said that I should study NLP because that would help me in coaching. So it's just been a flow. I didn't really do anything in this. It all came together for me. So I'm very blessed.
This is amazing. This is very amazing. Thank you so much, Tara, for your introduction. Hi, Sushrita. So you are next.
Thank you, Riya. So, hello to everybody. My name is Sushrita, and I am a psychologist. I have been practicing as a psychologist for over 3 years now, and it has been an immense journey. And I have understood that, so there is something that when I was pursuing my master's, I learned that is progressive muscle relaxation. Mm-hmm. So that is basically a version of Shavasana. Mm-hmm. And I have seen so much. So I literally started an entire program. So I'm associated with multiple places. I am the place that I'm associated with in Powai, Mumbai. There where I work, I have this whole program, which I call Relaxology, which is basically a practice of progressive muscle relaxation. How I got into being a psychologist and how I embraced progressive muscle relaxation was basically from a very young age. Let's say I was probably 7 years of age. I have understood people's problems. I have understood people's emotions, and I have always been that person who loves to be able to help people in whatever way possible. And that kind of sort of brought me to get into psychology. So picking psychology as a subject in my bachelor's, picking clinical psychology as my specialization in my master's, it has been a good 20 solid years ka journey wherein I talk about being in school and then moving towards professionally qualifying myself as a psychologist. Now to an experience which I had in my master's. So one of my professors, she taught us progressive muscle relaxation, and she gave us a quick 5-10 minute demonstration of the same. And I realized that, oh my goodness, this is basically Shavasana, but a little more focusing on the physical so that the mental is taken care of.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, this is just so brilliant. And I started, so I did a few sessions. I did something on mom, I did something on dad, and I did something on my friends randomly. And I could actually see results. There have been people falling asleep during the session and then waking up feeling actually refreshed, as if they've had a 7-hour well-rested sleep. That's the kind of feedback that I have gotten from people who have undergone this particular modality with me. And because of this, it encourages me even more to work in this direction, so that people who have even the as perceived banalest of stresses, this exercise has been helping them a lot. And that's one of the reasons I would call myself a proponent of the same method.
That's amazing, because I actually want to compliment you all on the amazing thing you do, because very frankly, I'll share a story of myself here. I got from Sushrita right now. 2 years back, I think I wasn't into meditation that much. And I just got into this because of my startup and the idea we have. Slowly, I started exploring meditation. And now I think if I have a sleepless night, or if I'm feeling too, I started realizing that I have anxiety. Before doing meditation, I never knew I had anxiety, because I always used to keep myself super busy, which was not helpful for me. Now, after starting meditation, I am more aware of my breath. I am more aware of my feelings. And now I can actually also control it with meditation. So I think there is a little dip which came, which made me realize, oh, I have anxiety. And then there came a peak. So this was very, very helpful in me being actually a better person, because I think I can handle a lot when I'm so focused, and I know I can manage my emotions now. So now my brain and my heart are not controlling me, but I am kind of controlling it. So thank you to you amazing ladies for doing this to so many people and providing this skill. Actually, you cannot learn meditation, but you can provide the platform to help people slowly develop that journey. So now I'll come back to you guys and ask my questions. So I would like to ask you ladies to explain what meditation really is, like in a very simple layman words, because a lot of people has asked me, oh, I don't chant, I meditate. I don't meditate, but I chant. I don't meditate, but I listen to music. And I don't meditate, but I do breathing techniques. So what is really a meditation, if you can describe one by one as per your experience? So, Madhuri, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. See, as far as the meditation that I follow, it is called as I said, meditation on twin hearts. See, there are different various meditations. Like you said, some people chant, some people sit quiet, some people look within. So there are various ways. The one I follow is called meditation on twin hearts. So the way that meditation works is, it activates your heart chakra and the crown chakra. Okay. And so what happens is all the negative emotions and thoughts that you have are flushed out of your system. When I mean system, it's your chakras, it's your aura, it's your physical body. All of this make a system. So it will flush out all those negativities, which will make some room for positivity. Because it's like having a cup of coffee, which is like, half filled, and then you want to have orange juice. If you keep on pouring, orange juice it's going to overflow, right? So you need to do some. So what happens is when all these things are flushed out, then you can be calmer, you can be peaceful, you can be more aware of your thoughts, right? And it influences your actions, your words accordingly. So I think meditation is stillness. It could be in any form that you get. If you feel still after listening to music, that is also fine. It is about awareness and about stillness.
That is an amazing description, because I can 100% vouch on that. So just to help people here understand also that chakras are not just these physiological things which we have created, but they are actually centers, and they have physical significance as well in the body. So they are not just a round of energy which you cannot see, but it actually has physical significance. So what here Tara, I think, wants to say is that it will help also a lot of people being address their emotional issues, right? Because especially with the current lives we are living in, addressing our emotions is a big problem, right, Madhuri? I
Yes,
want to vouch on it.
absolutely. See, because what happens is, as you rightly said, chakras are energy centers, and these energy centers have physical as well as psychological functions. So for example, the basic chakra, okay, it is responsible for well-being of your physical body, your bones, your muscles and everything. And it is also energy center of your well-being, wherein zest of life. So how excited you are about your life. People who are dull tend to have those small chakras. It also affects the kind of money you will generate, kind of opportunities you will attract. So a weaker Mooladhara chakra or basic chakra will mean that you will have difficulty earning money, you will have difficulty attracting opportunities, your physical body will not be very strong. So every chakra has its physical as well as psychological functions. And when one chakra gets affected, it also affects kind of chakras which are besides it. So that's how then the system goes wrong, and then you feel not so well.
And now I would like a different opinion, because now I want Sushrita to support this from the psychology point of view. So what opinion do you have on so how do you take care of your, let's say, out of your experiences, how can people help with meditation? What is meditation for you? Sushrita?
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I kind of missed you over there a little bit. Could you just repeat your question? I just had a network issue.
Yes. So the question is that what is meditation to you? And right now Madhuri addressed that she works in twin heart meditation. So that is basically opening up your heart, attracting opportunities. So now from a psychology point of view and in what you do, can you describe meditation and kind of take it from here?
Sure. So to give you a quick I don't know, insight or whatever, I also once upon a time used to practice pranic healing. I have also been through the multiple courses. So I know of the importance of twin heart meditation, and I know what it actually does to your mind and to your body. You will actually, after twin heart meditation, I have more often than not tended to experience some sort of lightness. So if I was physically being bogged down by something, I would, after twin heart meditation, experience that, okay, my posture is right, and I'm feeling a lot more relief. So that was about my experience with twin heart meditation. But now talking about what, so now talking about what meditation means according to me, or what meditation is to me. There is a term in Marathi which is called Chittachi Ekagrata. But to translate it simply, Chitta is the mind, Ekagrata is bringing it towards the center, the centeredness of the functions of the mind. So according to me, meditation is the ability to bring that centeredness to your mind. Okay. Now, the centeredness does not necessarily mean that your thoughts stop. No, thoughts come and thoughts go, but there is a point wherein you are able to allow the transmission or the movement of those thoughts without being so focused on what the thought is. So you're basically centralized to your mind and your body, and you're treating the two as one instead of two separate entities. So that is basically what a meditation is according to.
Perfect. Now, Meenal, Tara.
Yeah. Okay. First, I wanted to connect. Before talking about meditation, I wanted to talk a little bit about yoga, because for me, yoga is a way of life. Here, I'm talking about yoga as not only asanas. Nowadays, people feels like turning and twisting body is yoga. No, absolutely not. Asana is just one part of yoga. Yoga is a pathway of being in touch with yourself. That is your inner self. And it will take you, it will make you a better person. Following an eightfold path, it will teaches you all small things like, social conducts, yam niyams, till samadhi. That is how to go inward. If I'm following yoga, then I should follow it 24/7. Okay, if I'm sitting here and talking about yoga, and if I'm taking my class, and if I'm going outside to the studio, and if I'm fighting with auto person or with driver, then I'm not following yoga. I'm not following that life. So it's a pathway. And meditation is integral part of yoga. So asana and pranayam prepare our body and mind to do meditation, so that we can reach towards that conscious life, that consciousness. And meditation, this asana and pranayam is the bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind. This is meditation for me.
Perfect. It was actually, thank you for bringing up the topic and connecting meditation and yoga, because a lot of people think that, oh, yoga is separate, meditation is separate. And today, since we have International Yoga Day, it would be really good to kind of bring this topic, that why we are talking about just meditation, because it is a very integral part of yoga. Thank you so much, Meenal. Hi, Tara. So now next to you. What is meditation for you, and what is your take on it?
Okay, so thankfully everyone's dealt with all the technical and the really cool stuff. So I'll say it in complete layman's language. Okay, so meditation to me is something which trains your mind to enhance your current capability of attention and awareness. So anything you do would actually be termed meditation if you're completely focused. So I am food obsessed. Okay, so for me, cooking, not just, making dal rice or something which is day to day and it really doesn't involve my brain too much, something that I can do on autopilot, but something where I'm really focused and I'm determined to experiment, create something which is new. And when my 100% focus is on what I'm doing, that is meditation. So it could be anything. Like you said, people say, I chant, I don't meditate.
Yeah.
Right? So I believe that in a very, very practical way, you could actually meditate while doing anything. Exercise could be meditation, anything where you're 100% focused. Your thoughts, your energies, your body, your mind, your spirit is completely focused. That to me is meditation. That's how I look at it.
This is really amazing because there is this thing called as a flow state. This is termed to athletes generally, and the state, let's say the brain behavior on this state and that of a meditative mind is similar, which means that maybe an athlete is also in the meditative state when he goes for a game, because if they are thinking of their family or if they are thinking of other thoughts during that game, that is not possible. You have to be so focused on what you're doing that you have to get rid of all the distractions and be aware. That is what you exactly described, and I'm glad you did it in a very layman word, because a lot of people are like, oh, meditation and yoga are this god, spirituality, or you have to sit calmly, you have to be alone. But that is not really important. You can be meditative towards your work. It's a kind of techniques to be more focused.
Yeah, I think that's what scares people about meditation. This whole hoo-ha around be still, be quiet, don't let distractions come in, be completely silent. Of course, that is one form of meditation. I'm not taking that away, and I'm sure it has fabulous benefits. But for the lay person, you could be meditative even when you're extremely active.
So I would like to ask first our viewers, if you have any questions, feel free to ask these four amazing ladies. Next, I would like to ask is that why, if a person comes to you, Sushrita, or you, Tara, that I am having a lot of troubles in my current life. I am stressed, I am depressed, I am not able to sleep. These kind of issues which we have basically in our lifestyle. It can be due to any reason, let's not, there are many reasons. If we go there, it will take a lot of time. But how do you first help them psychologically and guide them, and then towards meditation?
So as a practice, I don't introduce meditation as meditation to them. So I never mention the word meditation to them at all, because then again, the notion with meditation that follows, or spiritual or religious, or this, or that, or God and everything, that follows. So in that way, I cheekily put meditation into the space. So the beginning of the session will be like inquiring about how the person is doing, what are the issues that the person is having, and then going on with the entire session. I reserve. So when I'm able to understand that, okay, this person is presenting with stress, anxiety, depression, like symptoms, what I do is I reserve the last 10 minutes of the session to engage in a quick 10-minute exercise, which is a form of meditation. It could be diaphragmatic breathing. It could be a small glimpse into progressive muscle relaxation. But I ensure that those 10 minutes, I allow the person, because what I think is that unless and until a person doesn't actually firsthand experience the whole concept and idea without the notions and associations with the concept already present, then it makes them not so open. So because I did not use the word meditation while in conversation with them and got them to do the exercise, and then they're like, oh, I feel better. I feel a little light. Oh, this is so cool. This is so interesting. I'd like to do this. I'm like, sure. So then I put it across that towards, okay, so as and when I feel that you are the session was a bit too stressful and it was just too much for you. So 10 minutes, we will do that particular exercise. I don't even use the word meditation because of the kind of association it has developed in their minds. And as we progress through sessions, then I actually explain to them that, okay, so I've already explained what is the exercise, how does it work, etc. Then I bring them to the understanding that this was actually a kind of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, what? Really? Meditation? Are you serious? I'm like, yes, it was a kind of meditation. And I thought that, hey, if I can offer you that experience, why not offer you that experience in session?
This is amazing because we always thought that psychology and science and meditation, these three should actually go hand in hand. But still there is a lot of bridges we need to fill, because thankfully you are one of those psychologists who believe in this fact and who promote this, because this is very important for us, because you're not giving them tablets, you're not giving them medicines, because that is just immediate relief. I think meditation can be a long-term benefit here.
Of course.
Okay, I was just seeing there are a lot of love and comments pouring you for women. Do have a look at them after the session. But yes,
Sure.
so now Tara, now to you, because can you just explain first what is NLP to our audience, and then we can jump to the connection.
Yeah, sure. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro is your neural pathways, which is essentially your brain. Linguistic is the language we speak, our communication. Programming is the connection between the two. So neuro-linguistic programming is not quite psychology, but I won't say it's not absolutely dissociated also. So neuro-linguistic programming has us practitioners doing a set of interventions, exercises, call it whatever. And every intervention requires focus. So, you know, when you're doing an intervention with your client, it requires focus. And as I said, to me, meditation is about attention and awareness. So these exercises build both interventions that you do, because typically, and Sushrita will understand this, that, you know, even when someone comes in and when they start talking about their problem, they go back into their problem, you know, when they're talking about it. And a lot of time they get either upset or agitated, and, you know, you give them a glass of water and help them relax. But a very simple thing that I think most practitioners and psychologists would do is to tell them to take a couple of deep breaths. Close your eyes, take a deep breath in, take a deep breath out. And that's an immediate calming. You know, it's short staying, but if you see someone getting really, really upset about recounting something, which is again not required unless the person really wants to. So this again is like that 2 seconds of meditation when you're telling them to breathe and focus on their breath, close their eyes. The moment they close their eyes, they're completely blocking out their surroundings. So that's one thing you've taken away. When you tell them to focus on their breath, they are actually focusing on their breath, hopefully. And you can see the breathing pattern change. Someone who's agitated would be breathing faster, but when you tell them to take these calming breaths, they do start taking deeper breaths. So it's an immediate response. So like Sushrita very correctly said, you know, saying things like meditation, etc., especially because I work largely with corporate houses, talking about meditation and all of that to a lot of people is, oh my God, what am I being asked? So a lot of people feel that, you know, meditation is there. You know, when I retire, these are the things that I'm going to do. Practice yoga and do meditation and stuff, not realizing it could be a part of your very, very busy life, even while you're living your busy life. So yeah, I don't really talk about meditation, but as I said, that, you know, things that I do with people is meditation, helping them find what really works for them, making them practice certain things and completely focus, even if it's for 5 minutes a day. All of these are meditative practices.
We have actually, in our research, we have actually seen the difference in the brain waves and the brain patterns after a person has meditated for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 15 minutes. And you really need to know what works on that particular person. It is amazing difference. If the person is doing the right kind of technique, then you will see actually the person feels so much better so fast. So you really, you know, sometimes you really don't need an hour, and sometimes 5 minutes are just perfect, and efficient. Thank you so much, Tara, for this explanation. Now, I would like to ask Madhuri and Meenal that meditation, as you heard from Sushrita and Tara, have a very, I don't want to say a lot of expectations are attached to meditation. In the Western world, as compared to India, it is very different. You can say meditation and you can attract a lot of people. So it is the total opposite of what we have experienced in India. Here people are more open to it, people are more excited to it, they believe in it way more. I am not sure why the reason is. So why do you think that people in India, the youth, are not very much open to it? Madhuri?
Okay. I was looking at Meenal, I thought she's going to answer. Okay, see, as far as my experience goes, majority of youth, probably they are busy with their own things. Maybe too much of time is being taken out because of studies, and these days, parental pressure is there that you need to be good at everything. You need to be good in badminton, you need to be good in football, you need to be good in singing. So children are going so many places, they are hardly left with time, any other time. And if there is time, then they would want to do something that they like to do, right? But I feel as far as meditation on Twin Hearts and pranic healing is concerned, we see a lot of youth. Now, for example, my daughter is 20-year-old, she's studying in Lithuania currently, but she got into meditation at the age of 16. So I just gave her an idea that this is how it is, would you like to try it out? And she loved the idea and she experimented, and after that, the sense of calmness that she felt, and since then she has been meditating, and she has seen the difference in her studies, the kind of relationship she shares with her peers or her subordinates, or with me, I mean with parents. It's different. And there are a lot of schools, in fact, here, for example, there is school in Thane, Goenka school. All their teachers, they do meditate, and sometimes they get their small kids also, nursery kids, they just get them om chanting done, and that's about it. So I think the scenario here is changing a bit. As you said, of course, in Europe, like when I went to Lithuania with my daughter, people out there were super duper open, meditation. The moment I said, okay, I'm going to conduct this, and there were so many people who, showed up, and which was a surprise for me, because if I were to do that here, I'm not sure if so many people would show up. But that's what happened. But as I said, here, youth is, I think they need to be told the benefits. Because I have seen that, with my daughter, when I told her that if you do this, it is going to help you in your studies and other, facets of your life. When they are aware, ki, okay, iske ye bhi benefits hai. See, usually what happens, we say, okay, meditation kar lo. But unless and until you attach them with their benefits, then it is easier for them to be convinced. So I have, for example, my brother's son, I mean, he meditates. My cousins, they meditate, and they're pretty young people. But when they know कि उनका उसमें कुछ फायदा है, they are going to get benefited in the ways they would like it. They are more open to it. So I think that connection, making that connection, is more important.
This is very true, because this kind of I remember two things. So there are a lot of people in very high executive jobs, like the owner of LinkedIn. So many big companies are practicing meditation on a daily basis. There is a company here, SAP. Their headquarters are here in Germany, and they, especially during the lockdown, that in a company called Alliance, they practice meditation daily over video calls for 15 minutes, and it's very compulsory. And this would be really good if we can do this thing in India as well. And the second thing was that I read these articles where the kids who started meditation at a very early stage, so this has already been set up in US, that schools have made meditation compulsory. So they call it the superhumans, because they are more aware. They don't get stressed over small things, grades. There's no pressure. People are more relaxed when they do it since a very early age. And thanks for bringing out, because you've seen the difference in people who have been meditating for since a very younger age. Thank you so much, Madhuri. So now, Meenal, to you, the same question, that why do you think this problem actually exists, and how you or how we can actually improve it?
First, I would like to talk about meditation. Nowadays, people are afraid of word of meditation. They are getting confused.
Mhm.
They are not understanding word meditation. You know, they have made it so complicated. As Tara rightly mentioned, if I like cooking and I'm doing, that cooking with lot of focus and concentration and with lot of mindfulness, then I'm meditating.
Mhm.
I don't need to sit and sit at one place, and I don't need to go into Himalayas and and wear that orange sari and do the meditation in mudras.
Mhm.
Of course, that is meditation, but
Mhm.
there are different types. Like the meditation which initially can start by chanting Om,
Mhm.
or you can just count 1 to 50 in reverse, so that your mind get focused on that counting, so
Mhm.
thoughts will settle ho jata hai thoughts. And in initial days thoughts do come.
Mhm.
It's absolutely natural, and it's the initial stage of meditation. Many of my students come to me and ask me ki meditation hota nahi hai, bahut sare thoughts aate hain.
Mhm.
And I always tell them ki it's natural. Or another query I always get that the moment I sit for meditation, I go to sleep.
Mhm.
And that's natural.
The
These
same-
all are natural things.
The
Okay.
same happened with me actually.
Yeah. These are natural things. You can see there are two types of meditation. One is Bahyaranga, that is external, and one is Antaranga.
Mhm.
Okay. So Bahyaranga meditation is a guided meditation where you can do a chanting, where you can count in reverse, where you can you can think of one topic and you can create a connecting thoughts.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Suppose visualization, that is also one kind of meditation. And Antaranga meditation, which will take you inward,
Mhm.
that meditation you don't require anything. You just need to sit at one place
Mhm.
and do the meditation. Right now, Riya, I'm talking to you. I'm
Yes.
talking, my entire focus is on you. My
Yes.
entire attention is on the camera. So right now, what I'm doing, I'm meditating. It's very simple.
It's very
And
difficult actually for a lot of people to be able to have a one-person conversation because they are thinking of the 10 other things they have to go home and do.
yeah, and that's natural. And eventually, you will come into that stage where there are lesser thoughts. I will not say no thoughts.
Mhm.
There will be lesser thoughts.
Mhm.
And nowadays, all over the world, youth all over the world are getting into meditation. And
Yes.
thanks to these organizations like Pranic Healing, Art of Living, even the Isha Foundation or the Vipassana, people are realizing the importance of meditation, that after doing a meditation, this in brain, this theta wave is activating, and that is help us to reduce the anxiety, stress.
Mhm.
People are understanding this now.
Exactly. This is really amazing. So we have one question from V, that she has a 24-year daughter who is a lawyer and she's stressed all the time. She has tried to introduce her to meditation, but she's not able to get her to see how beneficial meditation can be for her. How can she introduce her to meditation to reduce her stress?
Okay.
This is for all of you. So
Yeah. First of all, she should accept that she is into stress.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of problem or stress in life. First, we need to identify ki, okay, there is a stress.
Mhm.
Okay, that's okay. The moment we will identify the problem, half problem udhar hi solve ho jata.
Yes. But I think it is very difficult because if you would have asked me 1 year back, are you a stressed person? And I would have said no. I don't get stressed. I'm just over ambitious. I would have said that. But
Yeah.
how can we make people accept that they have stress? Because then only they would want to solve it, right?
So what if I'm sitting right now, I'm sitting in front of you and you are asking me questions. Okay.
Mhm.
So if I'm getting, little bit anxious or little bit worried, what will be the Riya's next question and how I'm going to answer it. And so what I'm doing, I'm creating a connecting thoughts, and it is lowering my prana.
Mhm.
Correct.
Mhm.
So this is stress.
Okay.
So don't go into word stress.
Exactly.
Just I'm not able to cope up with this. That's it. So first we need to identify this. I'm not able to cope up with this. So half the problem will get solved. Second thing, if she is into stress, then she should do the pranayam more, like alternate nostril breathing. Okay. The holding and the exhalation should be more. Like if I'm doing it, inhaling for the 1, okay, holding for 2, and exhaling for 4.
Okay.
So exhalation should be more. She should do diaphragmic breathing.
Exactly.
Okay. So she need to start with these small things. Initial stage, like she can start with the reverse counting, like 50, 49, 48, 47. The moment I'll miss it, I'll start again. So my entire attention is on counting. So that is a small meditation. So she can do that. She can start with these things.
Okay, perfect. Tara, Sushrita?
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead.
Tara, you want to go first? Go first.
Go ahead. Get started. I'll continue after you.
So, when you talk about stress, so let's just get down to understanding this, that psychological issues are something that are not visible. Okay, and people nowadays go on evidence-based practices. So, if you can prove it to me, only then will I accept that it exists. So, when a person is experiencing stress, you can perhaps ask them, are you having a headache? Are you having a pain in your neck? Are you having an ache in your shoulders? Are you having an ache in your back? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm actually having a headache. You know, why am I having a headache? I mean, I had this really stressful presentation that I had to give. It was just so much to do. And oh my God, I just had to stay up all night, work on my laptop and everything. So yeah. And that is exactly where you can pick up, like, okay, so is that really because you really have a headache? Or is it because of the situation where you were like, okay, I have to prepare for this presentation. That's why I'm having the headache. So when you're able to prove to them that the cause of your headache is not physiological, it is psychological, then they'll be like, hold on. So you're saying this is not physical? You're saying this is because I was thinking about that stuff and that's why I am feeling this? It will take a while for them to come to terms with what you just said. Give them that space and opportunity, but they will go, but how is that possible? But like physical, but. So when they get into that phase is when you're like, okay, all right. They will come back to you with the next question that, okay, so does that really mean I am stressed? Okay. So then there's this whole emotion cycle that follows, which I have learned in my years of internship with psychiatrists, etc., and fellow psychologists. Awareness, acceptance, acknowledgement, experience, and exhaust. So awareness, be aware that there's something that's going on. Acknowledgement, acknowledge that there is something going on. Accept, okay, this is what's going on. Experience, let me feel this thing. Exhaust, all right, bye-bye. Your time's up and you can leave now. Let's go forward to the next experience. So this emotion cycle also, when it is not fulfilled completely, is when people tend to experience these symptoms or these stressors. And in these circumstances is where, you know, meditation kind of sort of helps you understand this whole cycle and understand this whole process a little better, so that you are, so even a simple question that I ask that person that, so do you have any physical pain? That then gets them into that thought process, which is focused entirely on answering that one question. So that way, in a sense, they are also meditating on the question that I have asked them.
Okay.
They may not accept it or realize it, but that in a way makes them meditate on that one question that I may have asked.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Tara, what is your take on this? How would you solve this problem where people are not aware that they are stressed, and, you know, there's a lot of pressure? Because my mother used to do the same to me, you know, you should meditate, but I wasn't ready to, no, you're taking me the wrong side. So how could you deal with this?
So I'll be bad cop here and give an unpopular answer. Mothers tend to do this. Okay, so I have a 22-year-old, so I know how this works. And so the point is that if, ma'am, if your daughter has decided to be a lawyer, she's signed up for everything that comes with the legal profession, right? Which is long hours, adrenaline rush, and all of that. So I wasn't a lawyer, but I've worked in really high pressure jobs, and I was an adrenaline junkie. So if you took away the craziness of what I used to do, I'd be really bored and yawning. And after 2 days, I'd be saying, why the hell is something not happening, right? So if this is a person who thrives on that adrenaline, taking that away may not really be a good idea. Secondly, does she want to address the stress? Is she saying she's stressed, or is the mother feeling she's stressed? Mothers always feel, my child is not eating, my child is not sleeping 8 hours. Just see, she was up till 4 o'clock making a presentation. Now she's left home at 8 o'clock without proper breakfast. Oh my God, she must be stressed. Who's stressed? The mother.
Actually,
the daughter might be fine.
For answering this way, because it's amazing, because I hope my father is hearing your answer, and I would like to get you in touch with him, because he always gets stressed on the fact that why am I so stressed? I'm not stressed, this is adrenaline rush for me,
Yeah, so, exactly. And some people get off on it. It is their thing to do. So you need some kind of mental nourishment also to keep driving yourself professionally. And for me, it used to be the adrenaline. It still is. It's like, the thrill of a new contract, the thrill of success, and all of that. Secondly is, okay, if it is the daughter saying, I'm really stressed, the second point is, does she want to address it? Okay. First, is she stressed? Secondly, okay, she's stressed. Does she want to address it, or do you want to address it? So if the mother wants to address it and the daughter doesn't want to address it, we are still barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing I would advise is have a chat with your daughter, maybe on a Sunday evening or something, when she's a little more relaxed, or any time when she's relaxed, not in the middle of a million things, and have this chat that Sushrita spoke about, that, is ABCD things happening. Okay, do you want to do something about it? Because, the responsibility of addressing stress lies on that individual. It's not on the parents of that 24-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like force feeding someone, and I am absolutely not an advocate of that.
No, this is really good, because this is important, because sometimes, until and unless we really want to address it from within, and external factors cannot really help us. It can be our parents, it can be our siblings. It cannot be acknowledged.
So I just wanted to add something over here. There is a joke that psychologists have in their community, is that how many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? One, provided the light bulb wants to change.
Perfect.
Yeah, pretty much there.
Almost there. So now, thank you, ladies, for answering this. Now we have a question from the audience to Madhuri. What is the difference between mindfulness and meditation?
Mindfulness and meditation, there is not much difference. See, it's like, it all depends on how do you want to look at it and how do you want to address it. If you are, like everybody else said, meditation can be anything. So mindfulness is also meditation in itself. So they are not different from each other, right? So if I'm mindful about my work or whatever I'm doing, I'm meditating. When I'm meditating, and suppose I'm meditating on chants or whatever, there also I'm focusing on those particular chants. So I am mindful of those chants. So it's not different.
Yeah.
It is part of two different parts of the same coin.
Actually, I think meditation makes you mindful, and this is a technique which has been adopted by, let's say, the Western side to kind of create something which people over there understand more. So removing the ifs and the buts and the rights and the lefts, and making a more, new package basically to meditation. Thank you, Madhuri, for answering this question. So now the next question is to Sushrita. How to identify person who are in stress, have problem because of chemical changes in the brain, or the person's brain is developed in such a way that it's not going to change by medicine?
Okay, that was a very long question. Could you just break it down for me, Riya?
Yes. So the first part is this: how to identify a person who how can the person identify when they are in stress and are in problem?
Okay, so it is it's different for each individual, because each individual's response to stress will be different. You may notice a lot of physiological changes in terms of aches and pains, which are not explainable by any physical or medical condition. You are experiencing aches and pains in your body. You've gone to every possible doctor and they're saying, no, everything is fine. Your test reports are fine. Everything is fine. But you're still experiencing those aches and pains. That may be an indication that you may be stressed, or it may be another level of stress, or so on and so forth. So this is a very basic way of understanding if a person is stressed. When you are talking about physical complaints, physical complaints which actually don't have a physiological basis. Another thing that you can look at to understand if a person is stressed or not is you can observe a change in their behavior over a period of time. Let's say, for example, a week or 2 weeks. Just notice what are the events that are happening in their life and what is their response to those events. Perhaps these people may have gone through similar events before and are going through the event now, but their response to both of them is different. And if you feel that, okay, this is not typical of this person normally doesn't do things like this, and it is something that is off, that's a little amiss, then maybe that could be an indication that perhaps that person is stressed. Not 100% guarantee, but maybe that person is stressed. And sometimes if a person is really stressed and overwhelmed, you can just go ahead and ask the person, hey, you seem to be overwhelmed and stressed. Is everything okay? And if that person really is, and that person wants to talk about it, that person will actually come forward and tell you that, yes, this is what I am feeling and going through. And this part comes in when there is nobody to talk about this with, and a person coming and asking you this question shows that that person has that kind of care and concern. So yeah, these are some ways in which you can identify when a person is perhaps stressed.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think now we don't have any question, but I would like you all to share like a conclusion to our chat. One story or one experience you have had where, let's say, because here it's International Yoga Day, we would like to talk about how yoga and meditation have brought drastic change. Because as you said before, as all of you said, that people want to feel relatable to the fact that, meditation will solve my this problem and then I will do meditation. So now in this section, we would want people to give that relatable part so that they can see, oh, this person solved their stress and depression due to meditation, so I should also try. So please share one amazing story you have for our viewers. So let's start with Madhuri.
Okay. Like I said earlier, relatability factor. So if I were to share my own example, due to this lockdown, you suddenly had a lot of time, and so there are two ways. I could have been super lazy, or I could have decided that no, I want to just get things in control, and I just want to improve upon my life. So what happens is, meditation is one thing, and like you said, yoga is another thing. Two things, how if you combine them together, can bring about a lot of change. So earlier, before this lockdown started, I used to be procrastinate a lot, ki ye aisa karna hai, waisa karna hai, we'll do this, do that. But then I decided, no, nothing doing, I will start my meditation practices on a regular basis. Along with that, I started, say with meditation on twin hearts, we usually do small set of exercises, warm-up exercises, because they help eliminate stress or anxiety or fear, whatever negative emotions which are there. It helps to eliminate from chakras and aura, right? So you do that. And then I also started something called as 5 Tibetan exercises, which we do after our meditations. So both things combined have helped me a lot. And not only mentally, emotionally, but also physically. In 2 months, I lost 3 kgs of weight, couple of inches. doing yoga as well as meditation. Plus, it has made me calmer. So right now, I can let go things easily. There is a lot of awareness. Like if somebody does something wrong to me, I'm like, it's okay. Probably that's the way they are reacting because they are in that frame of mind. I don't have to react the way they are reacting. So now I have learned to stop, to pause and think, because earlier it was different. And in fact, the difference that the 6 years have made to my life, when I meet my ex-colleagues, they always tell me, Madhuri, you were this kind of person and now you're this kind of person. So the best part is, or the success of your mehnat is, when other people tell you that, okay, I see a lot of change in you, right? So I think it has done that to me. Plus, I've had certain patients, who are like, nee, meditate, we don't want to meditate, we don't want to do this. So initially we started with, Om chantings and basic things. And in pranic healing also, we say that, majority of your ailments are psychosomatic. So they are not physical, like how Shushita said, right? So it's like sardi, it's like cold, cough, fever, kind of the things. Those are the physical ones, because your stomach is upset, there is food infection or whatever, food poisoning. That's why you have fever, or throat infection. That's why you have fever. But rest of the things which happen, something like cancer, diabetes, or, whatever you name it, and it's psychosomatic. So this lady, she was having a lot of throat infection and acid reflux problems. And when I did scanning, my pranic healing scanning, I told her, lady, you're holding on to a lot of anger and grudges. And, so I, I had a conversation with her. It was not asking questions. We just got talking about it. And she revealed that, yes, I'm holding on to a lot of grudges. I'm holding on to a lot of anger. And because of which she was having these issues. So when I said you need to learn to let go, you're holding on to it, you need to learn to let go. So I suggested a few forgiveness prayers to her. And, I said, why don't you join one day, we do a meditation in the night on Zoom right now. So why don't you join? She joined one day and she was so happy about it. She said, oh, I did not even know that this, which I thought was a physical problem, is actually not physical. So when she, confessed a few things, she was not talking to anybody. She was holding on to every piece of information. So the moment she started talking to her family and expressing her problems, she realized that her problem is slowly getting started. So after a week's time, her throat is not hurting. Her acid reflux problem is kind of almost sorted. So now then she's saying, okay, I'm going to meditate now every day of my life. I want my life to be good, and this is what I'm going to continue. So when they learn from their own experiences, they are more willing to do it, right? So this is what I have realized.
Thank you so much, Madhuri. This is an amazing example that you have covered, that how meditation and yoga have been beneficial for you. Thank you. So now we move to Meenal.
As I mentioned earlier, that I was working in a corporate for 12 years, and suddenly in 7 days, on third day, after joining a 7-day course, on third day I realized, okay, this is my path. So what I understood during these 6 years, yoga is a union. We all know yoga is union of mind, body and soul. But with whom? With the universe. So Maharshi Patanjali has beautifully explained eightfold path by which we will reach towards Samadhi. So what I did during these 6 years, that I followed this eightfold path. So in eightfold path, Yama Niyam is there, which are code of conduct, that how to behave in society. Okay, and next is asanas. So asanas is not only about doing some postures. It is about, if I'm bending down, so what I'm doing, I'm surrendering. So I'm surrendering to the Mother Earth. What is my spine's position? Okay, where is the pressure? If I'm doing Paschimottanasana, or if I'm doing any asana, Padottanasana, what I'm doing, what I'm feeling from inside. Okay, is there any pressure, pressure in my muscles? If अगर कोई इतना awareness के साथ आसन करता है ना, then that person is doing justice to that asanas. So after doing asanas in such a way, we prepared ourselves to the pranayama. What is the pranayama? Prana, ayam. Prana is a life force energy and ayam is a control. So controlling life force energy. That is pranayama. Okay, and the next is pratyahara. Pratyahara is a bridge between pehle ke teen और बाद के teen. That is nothing but just controlling your senses. जो senses हम लोग को outer world में लेके जाते हैं, हम लोग जब भी वो senses को control करते हैं, that is pratyahara. And the next is dharana. So dharana is fixing your attention or focus at one point. That is dharana, which prepares you for the dhyan. And the moment you will go in dhyan, you will go in samadhi. And that's the meditative posture.
Okay.
So that's the secret.
Okay, so that's the secret which Madhuri, Meenal wants to share with all of you. Okay, so now next is Sushrita. Give the same question, that one example where you saw that meditation and yoga were life-changing experiences, because here we want to influence people to change their lifestyle and solve their lifestyle problems they have today. So just give one example so that people can kind of relate to it. 1, 2, go for it.
So I'll give you an example from my practice itself. It's actually two people with similar issues and concerns. High functioning stressful jobs. One person is into marketing and the other person is a doctor. So high functioning stress jobs. Major complaints being not able to sleep well, not feeling restful, even if they've slept enough. After they wake up, they don't feel fresh and all of that. So I told them, they were not very keen on starting therapy. So I was like, all right, fine. Let's just do some relaxation exercises. So I enrolled them in my relaxation exercise program, which is a modified version of Shavasana. And I got them. I did 1 or 2 demos and then they enrolled for the program. So what happened was, in the first session, both of them, I made them lie down flat. And I modulated my voice and I followed through the exact instructions that I had designed for it to work for them. 5 minutes into the instructions, one of them just sleeps off. He just dozed off. I continued to give my instructions because I knew that it is also the ability of the mind to be able to concentrate on the tone and the sound and the quality of my voice and the manner in which I'm giving the instructions that has allowed the body to reach that state of relaxation. Full 45 minutes, that person is okay. And I was like, well done. That is what his body needed badly. Now with the other person who is a doctor, he was keen on doing therapy and all of that. But I was like, listen, first let's just try to relax all of this activity that's going on. So he was a person who was not very regular with his workouts, though he enjoyed doing his workouts. I just started the relaxation exercise with him, and then lo and behold, he slept. It's like a very common phenomenon for me. Like, participants are going to sleep, my clients are going to sleep. Great, brilliant, well done. And then I saw that this person got back to workouts and with the same passion and gusto as this person would before. Because I then was able to understand that this is something, workouts bring peace and tranquility into that person's life. And I was able to help him/her achieve that process to getting back to something that is bringing that ability to get into that meditative state. Like all of my fellow panelists have said, meditation and mindfulness could practically be anything. So I practice fluid art. I practice coffee paint. I practice shopping. I practice eating yummy food and actually taking in the entire process of the taste, smell, sight, and touch of the food that I am consuming. So in that sense, I have seen the change in these two clients of mine, and they're doing really, really well now. So
this is
they have found their, they have understood that, okay, just because we have a particular notion about what yoga or what meditation is, that doesn't, that kind of sort of started breaking down. And then they realized that, oh, it's not just sitting in one place, taking deep breaths, doing asanas or anything that constitutes meditation. It could be many things. And they started identifying what their meditation was, and they started actually doing all of that. And I was like, it just came from just this exercise, and it came from them itself. So I was like, all right, great, that's really
perfect, amazing. Thank you so much, Sushrita. These were really nice examples, which I think a lot of people can feel relatable to. So now, finally, and Tara, I think you would have some nice different stories for us.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's different, but so I've spent the past couple of minutes actually copy pasting something on a document. I just thought I will show you something that a client had written. I had to copy paste because I took out his name and everything from the letterhead. So let me just try and do this, and I'll give you
1 second.
You don't
Can we share? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that can we share the screen? We can share the screen.
You can? No, apparently we can't. Anyway, so if we can, I will. So this is someone who was referred to me by a client who, it's a really large company. They're into hospitality and food, and he came to me with his only problem was that he had really, really high blood pressure. His main problem rather was that he had very high blood pressure, and people thought he was stressed. He wasn't really sure what caused the high blood pressure. He was on a massive amount of medication, which is something I am very anti. I think any kind of medication, which is, other than your vitamins and stuff like that, which you should take, especially if you're over a certain age, prescription medicine over a long period of time, I don't think is a really good idea. So, and his blood pressure was through the roof, and he would black out in office at times, and he had a really critical job. So his organization was extremely concerned about him, and they sent him to me. Now, that of course is a bit of a trouble as far as I'm concerned, because according to me, if the person wants to get better, he will come to me himself. But I realized while we were talking that he was open. He was just a little concerned about what I would do. The screen share would have really helped, but since it's not possible, so he wrote to me later saying that I was very wary because you're a coach, and then you practice something called NLP, and I had no idea what you're going to do, because according to him, this was a physiological problem. He had high BP, which is why he would get these headaches, etc., etc. And he had no idea why his senior colleagues, super bosses, were sending him to me. So we had a longish session, which is like about an hour and a half or a couple of hours. I took him through certain exercises, and I told you these exercises are extremely focused exercises. So you are kind of meditative when you're doing it. You're going through certain actions, motions, thoughts, but they are meditative. And at the end of it, I said, fine, you come back for a follow-up session next month, which is ideal. And next month didn't happen because he had travel, I had travel, etc. And we met, I think, after a couple of months. And the first thing he told me is, by the way, my doctor has reduced my blood pressure medicine. So, and I wasn't expecting that really, because we had exchanged a few texts in between, and he said, I feel better. I'm following the things that you told me. And especially for people like this who've been accustomed to being not quite well for a long time, you have to tell them to follow it mindfully. Like, I told him to print out certain things on A4 size paper and put it on his workstation. Saying, if I'm not feeling up to it, I will say no. I will close the door to my cabin. If I don't want to see people for 15 minutes, I don't have to win brownie points all the time by having an open door policy. So if you're at work 16 hours a day, I explained to him that these are the things that you can do and you need to do, because, in order to be good to somebody else, you don't have to harm yourself. So he had consciously done a lot of it, maybe not all of it all the time. But the the most amazing thing was that he said that little things which used to bother him a lot had stopped bothering him. He could actually let go of things. He didn't feel this overwhelming urge to control everything that his team was doing. He was micromanaging everybody and everything. He had stopped doing that. So these to me are quite phenomenal. And I met him at a professional event. It wasn't really social, but he just looked different. It took me a few minutes to recognize him from afar, and only when he came up and spoke to me could I actually relate that this was the same person. So, you know, I think it's really, really important. Meditation, yoga, call it whatever, they deal with the root of the problem, which medication doesn't. So that's a very fundamental difference between meditation and medication. The C and the T, you swap one for the other, you can benefit a lot.
Perfect, Tara. I think that was different, and it kind of is the perfect end to our this live, amazing live session, because it captures that meditation helps you solve your day-to-day struggles and helps you become a better person. There are different aspects to meditation. You can focus on different things, but it just helps you in being a better version of yourself. Thank you, amazing ladies. There are a lot of love for you in the comment section. Please do go and watch.
Will do. Thank you so much, Shreya. Thank you, ladies.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.